Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
You are listening to the financialsurvivalnetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1230 WBZT. Well, Obamacare, what do we do about it? How do you opt out? Pretty difficult, hard choice to make these days, but with us, you're familiar with him, Dennis Miller, millersmoney.com. Dennis, welcome back to the Financial Survival Network.
I appreciate it, Kerry. Thanks for having me on again.
Hey, well, nowadays, with what's going on, the chaos that Obamacare is bringing about, and it hasn't even really become operative yet. People are just trying to shop and figure out what the heck to do, and the website is toast. It's garbage. It's never really going to work right. That's my personal opinion. And you're in a quandary. You're trying to figure out what your options are, and honestly, you've come up with some choices. What was your catalyst that got you started looking into international healthcare options?
Well, Kerry, that's an interesting question that you asked, because this actually goes back into after the election in 2008. We started hearing things about government health care and things like that, and there was this debate going on, and I'm sure a lot of people remember Sarah Palin making the remarks about the death panels, and I don't want some government bureaucrat deciding who lives and who dies in relation to her mother. And my wife and I actually went to one of these town hall meetings, and the guest was a member of the House of Representatives who was on the committee that wrote the bill, and the purpose of the meeting was to discuss the bill that at that point in time was still pending. And he had the text of the bill on the table, and literally it was about 15 inches high, stacks of paper. And every question that he got asked, he had these little tabs, and he'd flip this thing over and he'd read to us from the text and explain it to us. The part that disturbed me the most is the one that I think people still haven't figured out, and that is, if in fact Medicare denies treatment for a senior, the doctor cannot provide that treatment or they'll pull his license. In other words, they will be taking away our right to pay for our own health care out of our own pocket. And that scared me. And Terry, I tried telling that to my friends, and they all said, nah, that can never happen in the United States. That'll never happen here. Well, okay. So my wife and I went to several international living conferences, and our purpose was to investigate healthcare options outside the United States if it's going to be denied here. And one of the things that we did was we went down to Panama and met with the president of the Johns Hopkins facility down there. It's a pretty world-class facility. I mean, a lot of U.S.-trained board-certified physicians. And he made no bones about it, that they are preparing for an onslaught of Americans coming down there for health care that is denied and delayed in the United States, just like the Canadians. And unlike U.S., you pay for the health care before you get the treatment, so that you're going to have that money available in order to get that health care. And I think while everybody's talking about the website, I had written an article that's on our website where I talked about that aspect and quoted one of the healthcare experts by the name of Dr. Bleak. And there's another one that Dr. Betsy McCaughey wrote that article about surviving Obamacare.
Right.
And she says seniors are going to get hit the hardest. Quote, hip and knee replacements and cataract surgery will be especially hard to get from Medicare in the months ahead. She warned seniors to get these types of procedures done now. before Obamacare goes into effect on January 1st. So, Kerry, what prompted me? Bluntly, a personal concern that as I am a senior, as is my wife, what good is retirement if you don't have good health, and we need to figure out where to get it.
Yeah, and Dennis, I've told everybody, I've shouted it out to everybody I know who's got insurance that's somewhat good. You're going to lose your private health insurance almost definitely. And even if you get it through your employer and it's a big employer, you're going to be paying more come January 1, 2014. Any procedure you think you might need or that you're going to need, do it in 2013. You'll probably reached all your deductibles and copays for the year anyway. I've seen doctors that I didn't even think I needed to see. I'm seeing an interventional cardiologist in a couple weeks. I just had a stress test. They said my heart's fine. I'm going to see this guy anyway, just because I think that there's some things I can do to further improve my lifestyle so I can get rid of a couple of medications. I probably could have waited another 6 months to see him, but you know what? I figure he might not be taking my insurance next year, so I'll have to pay it out of pocket. So I've speeded up all these decisions, seeing as many guys as I can. And even if I think maybe I'm being a hypochondriac, you know what? I'll treat it now rather than waiting in the future, because who knows? I think, Dennis, we're looking at complete and total chaos as people lose their plans and try to get onto new plans. And some people who've signed up on the site who think they have insurance aren't going to have insurance because the insurance companies aren't going to get their data like you thought that they were going to get it. We're looking at a total meltdown of the system.
Sure, let's take that chaos. Let's take that chaos further, because I totally agree with you. First of all, if you have private insurance, that's no guarantee that the government that they're still going to pay for the procedures that they paid for in the past. There's some sort of a link there. Now, I couple the fact that it's going to be expensive. We don't know if we're going to get the health care. I suspect we will end up like most government systems, and we all know people from Canada who've had health care delayed or denied that have come here for quadruple bypasses that saved their lives and things like that. But I went one step further. You know, Doug Casey and Nick Giambrino, who writes our International Man for us, went to Cyprus after they instituted their currency controls, and literally, Kerry, they shut down the banks on a Friday night, had currency-sniffing dogs at every point of entry, not allowing people to take money outside of the country. And, you know, you talk about that, but at the same time, you probably saw that recent article where Chase Manhattan now is limiting cash activity for certain clients to send $50,000 offshore. And they're saying, no, we're not trying to institute currency controls. Well, pity the poor guy who goes down to that Johns Hopkins facility in Panama, needs a quadruple bypass, and can't get it because he can't get money out of the country to pay for it. I think you're touching chaos, but I think chaos is going to go to the next dimension here because people don't know what's coming and what could happen.
Yeah, and what about that concept of offshoring some gold and some assets outside the country for exactly this type of possibility?
Well, Kerry, I'm very much in favor of that. You know, I wrote the article that's up on our website where I interviewed Dr. Gleed, and she made it very clear that under just a few rare occasions, if you're denied care, you're pretty well screwed. You can't get it, even though you have the money to pay for it. And I linked that with, I'm very concerned about currency controls. Well, then when you go one step further, you take a look, and I'm using Panama as an example. Well, Panama, the currency is the U.S. dollar. So let's suppose we had an investor. I think it's the most important medical decision, by the way, you may make is to have money offshore today. But he sends $100,000 offshore because he figures that'll cover most any procedure he wants to get in Panama where they take dollars. Well, what happens, Kerry, if we have high inflation and the dollar is worth significantly less than it was when he sent it offshore? So if you buy the concept that you're putting this offshore, and one of the reasons to have it offshore is so that you can have it available for health care, it would just seem prudent to me to have it invested in a vehicle that's going to keep up with inflation so that you don't put yourself in the position. I use the example of a friend. The guy needs a quadruple bypass and he only has money for a double bypass. It's not going to do him a lot of good. So yes, gold is an excellent vehicle so that you put that money offshore and then you can sleep comfortably knowing if you ever need it, and healthcare might be one of the options that's available to you. And now I'm going to play a devil's advocate. What's the worst thing that can happen? You never have to use it. That's not such a bad thing.
Yep. Just an insurance policy, literally a health insurance policy that's worth its weight in gold, for sure. And we got some other issues that we need to talk about, quality of medical care overseas, how you pick, how you choose where you go for these different procedures, because I know you're doing a lot of work on that. Up next on the financialsurvivalnetwork.com, 1230 WBZT.
Hi, it's Kerry Lutz. I recently decided to move my retirement account into physical precious metals to hedge against the coming times. If you want to move an existing retirement account into physical precious metals that you can hold in your hand, tax-free, there's no company that can do it more quickly and efficiently than Regal Assets. It took them just 24 hours to open my new IRA account, and all I had to do was fill out one simple form. The best part is that Regal Assets does all the work for you. They cover the setup and administrative costs for 2013. If you're interested in making the same move I did, call 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620. That's 855-678-6620, or visit them at regalassets.com. You'll be glad you did, and tell them Kerry sent you.
We're back on the financialsurvivalnetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz. We're speaking with Dennis Miller of millersmoney.com. Dennis, people are a little wary of going overseas for medical treatment. Obviously, if you have no choice, then you do what you got to do. But there are world-class facilities springing up all over the world, a lot of them based on the American model that was developed here, and you can get the same or better medical care for far less than what you'd pay here. I've seen places, India, Thailand, Singapore, anywhere from 10% to a third of what they're charging in the U.S., just like educational possibilities for your kids to go to college overseas, offshore as well, and pay a fraction of what you're paying here in the United States.
Yeah, I'm seeing it too. We're trying to evaluate that right now. Dr. Bleet and I have had several discussions about it. Which hospital would be better for which care? Having spent time with the president of the Johns Hopkins facility in Panama, I felt very comfortable there. But that's not the only option that's available. And I think that in time, we're probably going to see it evolve. I know the International Living people have done some reports on healthcare overseas and things like that. And it's something that people need to investigate. But my immediate concern is back to where I started. Obamacare is the law of the land. There's nothing we can do about it. This isn't a political discussion at this point. It's a situation of how do we survive Obamacare. And if seniors in particular are going to be denied health care, they're going to want to have options. And the first thing is, if you're concerned about currency controls, which I am, you know what desperate governments do, when they keep printing money and they want to clamp down. And matter of fact, what was the article that came out about the International Monetary Fund, where they recently wrote a report, and disturbing, called Taxing Times, calls for the confiscation of household assets by a capital levy on citizens with a positive net wealth to reduce advanced economies' debt-to-GDP ratios. And this is now happening in the International Monetary Fund. So, you got people who don't believe health care is going to be denied. You got people that don't think that they're ever going to clamp down on our money and not let us take us out of the country. And, at the same time, I think it's a smart decision to be a little bit proactive, because once we've got that money out of the country, if we need health care, at least we have the option to get it, and then we can figure out where the best place is to go. But you know what? As Doug Casey said, and Nick Giambrino said after their trip to Cyprus, the business people that saw what was coming and were smart enough to get money outside of Cyprus weren't hurt a bit. The ones that said, yeah, I felt uncomfortable, I was going to get around to it, some of them took huge, huge cuts. They called it capital levies, which was just taxes on their wealth. The government stole their money to pay the bills. And at that point, they can't take their money out of the country. It's too late.
Yeah, so the key is to act when you still have time to act, to not say, oh, I'll do it one of these days, and then by the time you do it, it's too late. It's the same thing as investing in gold and silver, because you see the whole paper currency, fiat currency scheme unraveling before your very eyes, and people say it, I hear it all the time, one of these days when price of gold and silver are down, I'll buy it then. And really, it's like waiting till after your house burns down to buy fire insurance.
Yeah. And, Kerry, I realize I'm coming in pretty strong, but I had somebody use the term fearmonger the other day. And
I've been accused.
But a friend came to my, I guess rescue would be a good term, because he said, a fearmonger to me is somebody who's using fear to sell you something you don't need for their profit. And let's go back to what he just said. I benefit not one lick if people follow my advice. I'm just telling them what I am concerned about and what my wife and I have done based upon our research. So, there's nothing personal for me to gain from that other than to help people realize what's coming on the horizon. And, don't let us be so uncomfortable with the message that we don't look through things and research it ourselves and see that this is a strong possibility, and we need to protect ourselves. What good is retirement if every day you got to take 15 pain pills because you're in such pain? I'd rather have the health care.
Yeah, and that's something else that we discussed in the past, is that the fact is our healthcare system doesn't have anything to do with your health. It's all about treating sickness, medicines, and surgeries. It's got nothing to do with your health. It's all about symptomology, suppressing symptoms, and by the time you get into the system, it's almost too late.
Well, Kerry, it's going to get worse, because they've got this panel now, and I think it's like 15 people that form this panel. They have no accountability. You can't take them to the courts. Congress can't override them. And they're going to be making the health care decisions for our country. And, I thought John Stossel had a great line where he said on Fox News, they were on about, you got these 15 unelected bureaucrats that are going to be in charge of our nation's health care. And Stossel's remark was, you think it would be any better if there were 15 elected bureaucrats? They're still people that have, they're not doctors. They're concerned about the cost, who are going to making the healthcare decisions for our entire country. And that's where we're headed. And people that have worked hard all their lives, paid by the rules, paid their taxes, saved up enough money so that they can enjoy their retirement, they're going to want to buy health care regardless of what our government does. And that's the people that just have to make those kind of decisions for themselves and make sure they're still in a position to be able to do it. I'm with you. The healthcare system isn't going to get better. It's going to get worse because all the decisions about healthcare are going to eventually be coming from the government and a group of people who are totally unaccountable.
Yeah, and opposite of democracy, and it's just another sign of eroding freedoms in the United States. And it's amazing that that for a country that once vaunted system, the greatest system of healthcare ever, we have the sickest population of any country in the world. That's what amazes me.
Well, and Kerry, it comes back to personal responsibility. I totally agree with you. Some people are going to see the handwriting on the wall. They're going to take the personal responsibility, and they're going to do what they need to do to protect themselves and their family. Just like I mentioned earlier, where they went to Cyprus, some people were proactive, and some people wish they had been. And I fear that's what it's going to come to.
Yeah. So get some money out of the country. Think about these international options because they're getting better all the time. There's no question about that. And really prepare for the worst effectively for the breakdown of the American health system, what's left of it, huh?
Well, capitalism's still going to survive. It just may not survive in this country. Because if you have wealthy Americans that need health care and have the ability to pay for it, there will be providers that are going to provide that good quality health care somewhere. And, the guy from Johns Hopkins, who, as I said, with the president, said, we're prepared for an onslaught of Americans. We're gearing up for it because this is what's coming.
And there could well emerge a black market in healthcare in the United States as well. You could envision that, huh?
No, I envision it, but the fact is, from what I've been reading, they're going to be taking some very significant steps to make sure that doesn't happen. I think if you take this kind of insurance or that kind of insurance or Medicare, you are bound by their rules. I think there may emerge a group of doctors that will not take anything other than private pay. But the concern that I have is that the government will still have a right to regulate them. So, Kerry, I don't know how much the average citizen is going to be able to afford that health care. One quick example, Dr. Bleed and I talked about one of the exceptions where she has a test that the insurance company pays $60 for, and that there's this myriad of forms you can fill out if you want to go private pay, but it says that the patient then has to pay retail price. Well, the retail price for that same test is $3,000. So what we're going to end up with is we may have a system here in the United States for the very wealthy that can pay for it, but then the middle class is going to be on planes going offshore for health care because it's so much more affordable overseas.
And they might just decide to stay over there because it could be much freer than what we're seeing here as well, right?
That's another discussion, but my wife and I have made several trips offshore investigating various places, and we have our family here and our grandchildren here, but we also know where the back door is if things get a little bit too uncomfortable for us. We know where we're going to go if it gets to the point where we can't handle it any longer.
Yep, and on that note...
I'm sure you do too, Kerry.
Yeah, we all have our, look, if things get too bad, you got to do what you got to do. But look, hopefully the world will come to its senses before that occurs. You don't know, nobody knows what's going to happen here, but it does have the potential to get quite nasty, and it's been getting that way for a while. So, look, let's just hope that that things improve and direction changes.
Kerry, I know.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to put the link to the column where I interviewed Dr. Lee. And I would urge your listeners to read what she has to say. And it is now being reinforced, as I mentioned, by the doctor who has written the book of Surviving Obamacare. So I'm not making this stuff up. And I think when you read what Dr. Lutz said in the interview, and I have another interview coming up with her in November, they'll begin to understand the gravity of the situation. And I'm not so sure there won't be a political pushback, but we can't count on it now. We have to deal with it here and now. Yeah,
I agree. Well, Dennis, thanks so much. Just give us your website again, please.
Yeah, it's www.millersmoney.com, and you'll see all of our free articles, and of course we have our link there also to our paid monthly publication. And that article that we're talking about is my antidote to the dirty Obamacare bill, and it's right up on the website right now.
All right. Well, hey, Dennis, as always, a pleasure. Don't forget, there'll be a link to Dennis's site over at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Go there, sign up for the newsletter. We got Dennis's article coming up next day or so. It should go out. Dennis, as always, a pleasure. We'll talk with you again real soon.
Super, Kerry. Thanks for having me.
Summer is almost over, and so far we've really lucked out. No hurricanes. And living in Florida here, I'm extremely grateful, but that could change tomorrow. And look, we're about to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of Superstorm Hurricane Sandy. Do you remember that one? Not very many people in the Mid-Atlantic or the New York area region were prepared for it. But if you had PrepareWise emergency preparedness food, you were ready. If you'd prepared with PrepareWise water and the basics, some currency and a means of self-defense, you weren't caught off guard. And if you weren't prepared then, please learn from it and get prepared now with PrepareWise emergency preparedness food. It always pays to prepare. Go to preparewise.com, use the code Lutz. You'll get great savings. Depending on the size of your order, you're going to get a whole lot more. Be prepared. Don't be caught waiting for the government to come and save you. Preparewise.com. Use the code Lutz, L-U-T-Z. Be prepared.
The Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.